Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lovecraftian video game retrospective and welcome to Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. And this is a horror game exclusive for the Nintendo Gamecube. And this game has quite a reputation, especially because Nintendo consoles are usually considered to be kiddie consoles, at least by some people, and that isn't really deserved because all Nintendo consoles have some pretty horrific games. For example, Clock Tower for the Super Nintendo, which in my opinion is one of the scariest games of all time, not only for the Super Nintendo but in general. But anyway, we're here to talk about Eternal Darkness. So in this game you take the role of Alexandra Ruivas, granddaughter of the late Edward Ruivas, and you investigate Edward's creepy and old mansion and to uncover some pretty dark secrets. And I think that's all I'm going to tell you about the storyline, because everything else is pretty much spoiler territory and I don't want to spoil this game for you. So gameplay wise, this game is a little bit like Alone in the Dark or Resident Evil. You investigate an old house, you have to solve some puzzles, there's some fighting but it's not the game's main focus, and in the end you have to overcome dark powers that are probably stronger than you are. So this game has some special features though. So you do not only play as Alexandra, who by the way looks like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you also play as a bunch of other characters in different time periods, which is quite interesting. But the downside is that this doesn't really change the gameplay a lot. You still have guns. At one point you have an automatic rifle, and in another time period you have a musket, but ultimately it's not really all that different. And the downside is that you have a lot of characters. You have a total of 8, and that means that all the characters get comparably little screen time, and they aren't really all that well developed. Even Alex, your main character, she's basically just your blonde heroine, and while she's not unlikable, she's not very well fleshed out. And that's kind of sad, because this game puts a strong focus on the story. Gameplay wise, this game is pretty good, but it's also actually a little bit too easy. The puzzles are all pretty simple. It's usually stuff like move boxes, find an item such as a key, and open the next door. And the same goes for the combat, because the combat has an auto-aiming system, and that makes it actually pretty easy. It is quite convenient because this game has semi-fixed camera angles, so the camera angles are not completely fixed like the one in Alone in the Dark or Resident Evil, but they're also not completely free. So the camera moves a little bit with Alexandra or whatever character you're playing, but it also changes occasionally depending on where you go. So as a result, aiming without the help is a little bit difficult, or would be a little bit difficult, so I'm glad for the auto-aiming, but on the other hand it makes combat really easy, especially with the melee weapons, which in my opinion are more effective than the guns, because while you have to get closer to your enemy, you also can pretty much kill all of them with one precise shot to the head. At least it's possible for a lot of enemies, and to be honest, there aren't a whole lot of enemies. There are very few enemy types, and a lot of them feel very similar, and that's a feeling that the developers just didn't have enough time to finish this game properly. So graphics wise, this game looks pretty good. The atmosphere is alright, but it could look a little bit better, and one of the reasons why it's a little bit subpar compared to some other GameCube games is probably because that this game was originally developed for the Nintendo 64, not for the GameCube, even though later on it was, well, not ported, but it was developed for the GameCube ultimately. So I don't know, this is a lot of criticism, but I would recommend Eternal Darkness nevertheless, because this game is pretty fun after all, and since it's not too difficult, all the frustrating parts don't really end up being too frustrating, with one exception. That's the Sanity Meter. So you do have your usual resources such as health and stamina, which do what you expect them to do, and you also have sanity. Well, the thing with sanity is that whenever you see supernatural things, your sanity drops, and that can have different effects. For example, the walls can start bleeding, or the game even gives you the impression that the disc is corrupt, but it really isn't. It's basically just an effect. That sounds pretty cool and it's pretty interesting at the beginning, but ultimately it just ends up being frustrating, especially because in the end you get a pretty easy method to just refill your sanity meter, so it ends up being more of a nuisance than an actual interesting game feature. But again, I criticize this game a lot, but I would recommend it nevertheless, provided you do have a GameCube or a computer, because you can just emulate this game, provided that's something you want to do. So yeah, this is pretty much all I have to say about Eternal Darkness. I know I sounded pretty negative, but you should give it a shot. It's pretty unique for the console, and I think it's still worth playing, and if you have the opportunity to pick it up, do so. So thanks for watching, and I shall see you next time. Take care and goodbye.